asking who you.
Dave, we're recording you. Continue.
I think I've more or less finished what I was saying, other than great to have Aaron being part of our community and his contributions to, of course, OWASP, our local chapter, and many, many other security events across the globe. I know he's shown his face virtually as well as in person for many, many years. So I'll shut up and let him share everything he's got. So, and you're in a friendly and welcome back. And like I said, we'll see you next year, I'm sure, in person. Amen.
Okay.
Amen.
Right, well, thank you, guys. Let's get started. We're going to run through our short introduction to LA chapters meetings and what we're doing, and then watch a short clip on OWASP and what they do. And then we can just hand off the meeting to Aaron to continue. So Aaron, as you guys heard, he's presenting our meeting today. And let me make sure that I'm recording it. It is recording, right? Yeah, it is recording. Let's get to the next slide. These are the folks along with me that are on the board of Los Angeles chapter of OWASP, and we are really a good team that we tag team and help out to make these meetings happen. We have meetings lined up for November, not December. If you know anyone that would like to present, just send them our way. This is the clip that I was talking about, so I'm gonna just try to run it.
It's a nonprofit that stands for the Open Web Application Security Project. OWASP is a community of developers, technologists, and evangelists improving the security of software through tools and resources. OWASP has 100+ active projects, and new project applications are submitted weekly. Projects are open source and are built by our community of volunteers, people just like you. Community and networking. There are hundreds of local chapters worldwide and thousands of members. Meetings are free and open to everyone. They include training, talks, and networking opportunities. Education and training. OWASP hosts many events each year. They are a great way to improve your skills, build your professional network, and learn about new trends in the industry. One of the many ways you can get involved is to become a member. The membership benefits include discounts for events and trainings, your own OWASP email address and Google Workspace access, a vote in our OWASP Global Board elections. And recently, OWASP added a brand new member benefit, access to hands-on application security training through the OWASP Secure Flag Open Platform. Join us and become a member today.
Right.
It's a nonprofit that stands for the Open.
It's always tricky to get this part moving along.
Web Application Security.
Okay. So these are where we have our notices posted. We have all the videos recorded and will be posted in our YouTube channel. So now we have our own customized YouTube URL as well. So please go and subscribe. And if you can, please share the word and have other people join and watch the previous videos as well. There's tons of good material in there. As you know, the September 24th was the 20th anniversary of OWASP. So there was a 24-hour long marathon of meetings and presentations. Most of them were really, really high quality, and all of them were recorded. So head on to OWASP's main website and you can see the recordings there. If you know anyone that would be willing to sponsor our meetings, please have them contact us. We have over 2,300 members now on our Meetup channel. So very good audience and targeted audience for anyone that's interested to get the word across. You will get 5 minutes to talk about your product, and so please spread the word. Our next month meeting would be by Sean Wright. He's going to talk about open software, open source software supply chain. So mark your calendars, November 24th, same time, same place. Zoom in and watch the presentation. And with that, I'll just hand off the meeting to Aaron. And Aaron, you have the floor. Please take it away.
Thanks, Edmund. Give me one moment. Let me know how it's coming in. Can you see the screen there?
Yep.
Yeah, so we can see it. All is good.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Edmund, Dave, rest of the board for having me. It's been a while since I've connected with you all, especially the last 18, 19 months. And, very glad to come and speak and show you all what we've been working on with both the OWASP IoT Project and the Cloud Security Alliance IoT Working Group, and where those kind of groups, converge in some senses. And then also how the work that we're, the efforts that we're working on, impact medical security, whether that's device or health delivery organizations. So I gave this presentation back at the Biohacking Village earlier this year, but there are some new introductions that we'll be going through. I dropped my Twitter at the bottom right, not too hard to find. So again, super glad to be here, and thanks to the board for having me. So I lead a couple teams at Cisco Meraki, both the product and application security team, essentially, defending against, hardware threats, firmware threats, wireless, cloud, all the fun things that come with IoT throughout the whole stack. I lead a number of OWASP projects. The IoT project is one of them, and a number of sub-projects. I've been involved with OWASP for a while now. I was on the board of directors for the LA chapter for a handful of years with Dave and others. Oh man, it feels like a different lifetime now that I think about it, but great times, great times. I co-chair the Cloud Security Alliance IoT Working Group. We have someone on the call as well, our chair, who joined. Thanks for joining. I'm a co-author for an IoT penetration testing cookbook with Packet Publishing, and I've reviewed a number of books in this space, both in IoT as well as general security books. Now, the latest one is a Bug Bounty Bootcamp, which should be releasing soon. I think the supply chain issues have definitely hit no starts pretty bad. I think the original release date was back in August, and it's pushed till I think this coming month. But prior to that, the practical IoT hacking, which has chapters on medical device networking and security, and building kind of Wireshark dissectors, and how to actually review DICOM protocol communication between devices, and then how to build your own Nmap scanner for DICOM as well. So if you get a chance, feel free to poke at these books. Again, ton of knowledge in there, ton of great steps and tools, and more to come as well. Aside from that, totally involved with other groups, and kind of getting knee deep into IoT, but fun stuff, with the projects that I work on, and the devices, the millions of devices that we protect over at Cisco Meraki. So again, thanks for having me, folks, and we'll jump right in here. And I'm going to skip this slide since we did have an introduction already on OWASP. Don't want to reiterate some of the facts there, but you all are here for a reason, and we're all here for the same reason, right? And that's to share our knowledge and get folks, up to speed on some of the industry happenings in certain spaces, right? So I'll first start with OWASP projects, and then I'll lead over to Cloud Security Alliance, some of the projects we're working on over there as it relates to medical device security. Brief intro on the OWASP IoT project. It started back in 2014, and it was designed to help manufacturers, developers, and consumers, so really a broad audience, understand IoT security issues. And at that time, it was somewhat of a newer space, right? And now it's become a whole different sort of beast, right? With everything sort of connected and new types of architectures that are spinning out of traditional stacks over to to networks, to devices and edges, right? And we want to get into all the jargon there, but the idea is to make more informed decisions on purchases that you're buying, but also what you're deploying, and also how you're building them and designing them. So we've been lucky enough to have been published, cited in a number of published standards and books, but also collaborate with other alike organizations in the industry. I mean, obviously, right, there's one with Cloud Security Alliance, but there's certainly ones with let's say, ANISA is one, and other folks who sort of ask our group for reviews and contributions to some of their projects. So we really like to cross over and not work in silo, because we're sort of saying the same things here, and we want to make sure that we're aligned and that we're not duplicating efforts in some cases. So we've broken down the project into a couple of categories. Seek and Understand is one. That's more on the educational piece, right? And there's a few projects here, namely the kind of flagship of the group, which is the top 10. Then we have IoT Go, and then we have a mapping project for the top 10, which maps to sister projects. So we'll get into a little bit of these. So first, the top 10. We've had a couple of editions released, and the idea behind the top 10 is to be able to provide a list that details top 10 issues to avoid and vulnerabilities and risks to avoid when building and deploying and managing IoT systems. Again, broad audience lists, reach a number of different use cases and maybe applicable more to one particular use case or audience than it would be the other. But the idea was to be simple in our approach and holistic in some of the examples and verbiage that we gave. So these are necessarily like the highest priority items that, if you're a manufacturer, how do I build and how do I ensure I'm building, software and hardware correctly, as well as the enterprise when you're buying, purchasing and deploying, and also consumers as well, right? Can't forget about folks like us. We're all consumers. We're all purchase different types of connected devices, or maybe we've inherited connected devices if we've moved into a newer home that sort of has these products already installed and they're already smart homes, so to speak. And so IoT Go is our vulnerable firmware, which is based off of an open source build system platform called OpenWRT. And IoT Go consists of vulnerabilities that include the top 10. And a lot of the pervasive issues you see in IoT products, some of the misconfigurations, some of the services, some of the vulnerabilities with known public exploits there. So it was really built as part of a learning platform. But actually, one of the authors from the from the Practical IoT Hacking book have reached out, was like, hey, Aaron, what did you use for your book as examples? And how, I don't want to get into any legal trouble. What can we do here? Because I don't think I have anything I can report to and disclose and have the time to do that. So this project actually spun up as a result of the book needing some examples of vulnerable firmware. And we sort of created exercises and challenges, as well as supplemental references to kind of help drill home some of the common vulnerabilities you'll find in firmware and in IoT devices. So really as a launching pad, hopefully, if you've never, played around with firmware, you've never, extracted file systems, or you've never played around with web applications for embedded devices, it's a good opportunity to not only, play around with those aspects, but also we provided directions on how to build firmware yourself too. So that can also gain gain a different perspective and exposure to how firmware is compiled and how libraries and packages are how they're linked and such and built into one image. You might find out some things that would probably change your perspective on why IoT is so complicated and so difficult to protect. So just a few screenshots. Here's the sort of landing page or of the embedded web application for IoT Go. Super straightforward. I guess as far as what you'll find right in IoT devices, a lot of debug interfaces or interfaces that may be for testing that were left behind, in a release image or production. And sometimes these allow for backdoor activities, right? Where you can gain access to a shell, to a command line, and then perform post-exploitation activities, right? So there's a lot of cool things that you can use within IoT Go to help you get up to speed on your approach. And then there is some guidance that we provide as a supplementary. Here's a screenshot of the backdoor that's running on IoT Go. So the idea is to follow a methodology, right? Like if you don't know where to start, right? Let's start from the beginning, gathering data and all that fun stuff, figuring out services, and I'll talk about a project afterwards that can help in this area. Here's a screenshot of the listening services, and you'll see some common ones here. DNS, you'll see port 8443, some UPnP, right? You might have heard that IoT devices and UPnP, a lot of vulnerabilities there and what could happen and the risks. So we certainly try to drive those home. So next we have a few other projects. So we had seek and understand in one category, and one is validate and test. Now they sort of go hand in hand, right? And these are the resources that you can use in combination with the project. So starting with the firmware security testing methodology, right? Let's say you have IoT Go and you want to download the firmware image itself and go about it that way. You can use the firmware security testing methodology and go step by step into the nine sort of stages we've defined. And again, like any methodology, you can jump from one to the other depending on where you are, what the goal is, what your experience level is. But if you're like me and you sort of need some of those guide rails sometimes, maybe if you can't focus, or you just need to ensure that, hey, I'm covering my bases, or I want to provide value in a way that, at least detailing what I've tested and tried and what worked and what didn't work. So these methodologies are used as a reference to help you, right, through your assessment, your pen test. And this is usually right after you acquire a piece of firmware off of the device. But again, going back to IoT Go, you can use this step by step, and you'll find some fruitful results. So with the methodology, we added common tool usages with examples and walkthroughs, as well as other vulnerable or similar vulnerable firmware. And some of these are for medical as well, different platforms. Maybe they're platforms as in CPU architecture, whether it's ARM-based or MIPS, or if you want to do x86 or 64, you can do that too. So what we try to do is, again, to arm more professionals and more hobbyists or researchers to get started in this space, right? Or if you want to do bug bounties or you want to make some extra money on the side, like by all means, join a program that has hardware. We have hardware at Meraki, hint, hint. But we also provided some, to get you really off the ground with the preloaded, virtual machine with tools and also the vulnerable firmware in there is something that we prepared. So again, really trying to get folks going and help with, the process pieces, but also the technical pieces as well to kind of bridge those gaps. So next is the IoT Security Verification Standard, ISVS. Now, the aim of this project is to provide a basis of testing sort of IoT apps, but also the hardware as well, and sort of the way it's designed, right? You can't fix a hardware design in the field. Usually that's a next revision or a next iteration, right? But not only are we testing, providing that normalized coverage with ISVS, it also provides the opportunity to detail contextual requirements when you're building devices. So typically, in a product development lifecycle, you have PMs who are building product requirement documents, right? And they sort of, go through all the market analysis, go through what the hardware, go through all the constraints, what the pricing would be, and then they have the technical requirements there, product security requirements. And here's a good opportunity to refine those requirements to, what's applicable to, to that particular device or platform. And what this project does is it has 3 different levels. This is following suit as far as ASVS and MASVS. So one for the web, one for the mobile, one for software composition, more so like the build systems, if you will. I guess that's a oversimplification of it, but it's really supposed to provide two different purposes with the way it's written. So I'll give you an example, a screenshot of the software platform section of the project here, where we have the bootloader and how the operating system is configured. So this is known as a software platform in the industry, right? And you'll see that the different levels and check marks for each level. And we have documentation on how to use the project. I will say it's not officially released yet. There's been some delays, but we're optimistic that we can get it out very soon. Coming back to the levels though, like one that comes to mind, you'll see level 1 that you'll probably point out is insecure protocols and libraries such as Telnet and FTP, right? Like level 1, every device or no device should really have that, right? In a production image. When there's better alternatives available, more secure alternatives available. So when thinking about, kind of want to take a step back here. When thinking about medical devices, right? Telnet and FTP is actually a perfect example of some of these protocols that are enabled by default. And that's either for ease of use, for compatibility. Maybe they're using something in the manufacturing line that makes it easier for them, and they haven't had a reason to switch over to a password or a certificate-based sort of file transfer, or even SSH for Telnet, right? It adds an extra step. So a lot of these are really downfalls in sort of the design phases, right? It's not really thought out, and it's not part of their threat model, right? And even future-proofing of their devices, as the industry changes very fast, as you all have noticed. And these devices are going to be in the field for a long time. And when you are deploying a medical, a safety critical device that could have direct privacy and safety impacts, these have to be thought out a little bit further and incorporated into designs and requirement documents. If you're a manufacturer, right? But also if you're a researcher, these are easy things to check for. It's written as verify that. So shouldn't be, and there's supplemental information as well that we provide at the bottom of each section or chapter. So some honorable mentions to kind of round out the OWASP space here of IoT. The embedded application security best practices, we're going through a refresh. And essentially, these practices are pretty similar as far as pretty static in nature. There's not much has changed in how we ensure that best practices are followed, but it's more refining some of the updated technology and use cases and how the industry shifted from a more, I guess, agile and the velocity of how IoT devices are being developed. So with the sort of software development best practices with the embedded project there, we have the flip side of the firmware and software development security aspect, and that's hardware security testing methodology. And how do I test a piece of hardware? How do I know that I am testing it in a way that I'm covering my bases and that I've tried what I needed to try in order to bypass this certain control. And now this project's still in flux, and we have folks who are contributing and helping out. But again, trying to get the entire stack right. And you're probably thinking, why is OWASP involved? Why is OWASP so intrigued with hardware, firmware, software embedded development, right? But everything is software. Literally everything is software. Hardware would not be able to talk. Would not be able to talk without software and sort of those drivers and capabilities in between. And that's why it's key that sort of the landscape of IoT is changing, right? In the sense of not only smaller devices in scope, but you have vehicles, right? Vehicles that are driven by software, almost completely or pretty much completely now. And not going too far into the vehicle space or automotive space, but same thing with medical, right? Everything from the device to a telehealth device over to some sort of management system or the cloud architecture, everything in between, all protocols require software in order to function. So we're here to plug that gap from both the technology perspective and policy where we can. So switching hats, wear a lot of hats these days. Actually, not today. Did my hair, found out I was being recorded. A little bit about CSA. So CSA is a similar organization compared to OWASP. Now, CSA was founded in 2009, but also has regional chapters around the world, similar to OWASP, as well as events, local events or global events or kind of events in the country, US and Europe and such. There's also a number of free resources provided by CSA. Not only is our work and our guidance documents and best practices and such free, but there are also educational opportunities that that CSA provides. So the CSA IoT Working Group, so we collaborate with technology organizations to provide frameworks and guidance to help enterprise users design and deploy secure IoT systems. So we've also been published in an RFC, actually, in a number of different books and standards, and cross-referenced in a lot of IoT security regulations, throughout the world, actually. And I guess I forgot to mention, even ISVS has been cited by FTC recently as part of a standard to follow. So, super flattering. And if, any of you all are interested in getting involved, like by all means, ping me. But again, this organization or this group, IoT Working Group, been involved since the beginning, and Brian on the call was the chair. This group spun out of the mobile working group. And then, around the same time as the OWASP project, the IoT project grew in 2014 is when the IoT Working Group spun out. So we put out a number of publications. I've highlighted two sort of in the middle that are medical related, and medical device deployment standard, and we're also working on a third, which we'll get to in a bit. So you'll see some are industry specific, some are enterprise specific, and then some are research. The IoT Controls Matrix is our flagship project for the working group. Now it's modeled off the CCM, which is Cloud Security Alliance's flagship project as well, also a standard, if you will, CSA star. And what this project is really meant for is enterprise security programs. It's really holistic in the sense of policy, processes, technical controls, and it's broken down into, those are all broken down into domains. And we have 21 domains of security controls. And recently, I won't say recently, but we have version 2. I think the pandemic has give me that gray. I'm losing timelines here, but I want to say last year is when we released version 2, and we're now working on version 3. But version 2, we've had a number of control refinements and updates, as well as a new domain structure, added a legal domain from lawyers who are participating in our group, as well as security testing and sort of the cadence in which you do so and how you do that for different types of infrastructure and for applications. And the idea as well is to simplify some of the controls, and that's part of the refining process, right? Is ensuring that they're clear, they're concise, and they're measurable. I think that's one of the key areas there. So I mentioned version 3. In version 3, we really want to kind of glue the process and the policy pieces and the infrastructure ecosystem with the device-focused requirements. And that's sort of to get the holistic picture of risk, right? And risk to a company, risk to a product, or risk, to an organization. And evolving those controls, as the industry is evolving, zero trust and zero touch provisioning is one that is top of mind. Safety as well, and mappings to CCM, the version 4, which was released earlier this year. In addition to a shared responsibility matrix, or a model, if you want to think of it that way. These shared responsibility aspects of publications change depending on your organization, but it's still a basis to know who would be the right stakeholder for which sort of process, procedure, and such. And then we'll continue to map to sister projects or projects that we have a vested interest in. Those with NIST, CCM, absolutely, and ANISAs as well. So plenty to go around, plenty to work on, and the industry again is sort of maturing in different ways from the hybrid work environment now, with the pandemic, and then what's to come, right, in the coming year. So what the idea is for these, for our matrix, right, is to ensure, right, that the risk is minimized to the IoT products as well as the infrastructure as much as we can by providing those controls and giving the guidance on when those controls should be enforced. Because IoT is hard and IoT products continue to be developed and released with vulnerabilities and riskiness that they don't necessarily need to have. But if they had more informed sort of controls and technology, aspects of what they can improve in their design, this is where we try and help and provide those opportunities. So with connected products, it's very difficult, right? You put a device in your network, you control it via an app, you don't touch it really, you just plug it in and it goes and it works. You don't really know what's inside, so you're totally basing that model off of trust in the manufacturer, trust in the cloud providers, trust in whoever's the intermediary. And part of what we're trying to do is sort of build, right, those interoperable security controls and tooling, right? So it's not just applicable to one particular use case, just the cloud or maybe the device itself, but for both, right? And that also helps, right, for maintenance and sustainability for organizations. And I think that's key in the day and age of where we're living in. But again, to provide that that independent sort of validation with these controls and having some of those interoperable tools provide that automation to validate what's in place and when you should be testing those controls. So a lot to unpack there, but really it's sort of the whole picture rather than whole picture of a IoT ecosystem than one particular use case or device. And when I guess I should comment, right, on some of how this affects the medical industry, right? When there is a new device deployed, right, how often are you going to be testing some of these controls, right? And I think that's some of what we're trying to hammer home with the IoT Control Matrix, is helping with ensuring the organizations are aware of what they could be doing as far as where is the line and how far and how deep do you go. Zero trust is one that's particularly useful in terms of medical, and it's one even for again, coming back to hybrid and the remote working that we're now exposed to, or some more than others. I've been remote for about 7-8 years now, so the organizations are the folks who are sort of adjusting, and so are the models of security and the controls you can put in from not only in your home but also in organizations and wherever else in the world, right? So you need to be able to actually you need to trust but verify, right? That's a term that's used often in the industry. In this case, right, zero trust is actually that. You never trust. You always verify. You assume breach, and you verify explicitly they are who they are. And that starts with device onboarding, right? Does that device have a security chip of some sort, whether it's a TPM, some sort of secure element, whatever it may be, a trusted anchor, right? And usually that provides some sort of identity, secure identity. If it's burned in manufacturing, it's not. It shouldn't be able to be modified in the field, especially by malicious actors. But once you have that sort of identity, you can authenticate to a network, and then depending on after you authenticate, what do you have access to, and that's sort of where the authorization and the policies come into play, right? And how you monitor those activities as you move laterally through a network, or you're just browsing, or you're doing whatever you need to do through that device. And that could be a gateway device, that could be like a medical device that is speaking with the gateway, or vice versa. There's a number of different use cases here. So on to the CSA medical device incident response playbook. Now, this playbook is set to release in the next couple of weeks. The playbook details 2 different types of incidents, but you can broaden them out if you wish. Sort of the main incident types are kind of vulnerability disclosure. What happens if a medical device is exposed to a vulnerability, and what do I do then? And some of these use cases vary depending on the type of device, right? And we'll get to those in a moment. But also probably more, I mean, these are both prevalent, but malware, ransomware. If you've been keeping an eye on the news, every week it seems that there is a new ransomware attack, a new variant, a new organization that is taking ownership of that particular effort, right? So what the playbook is really meant for is sort of kind of the guide rails, the guidance to define your program, your incident response program in a medical or health delivery organization setting. And we define a number of different audiences there as well, but we also came up with 7 clinical scenarios. And those scenarios consist of, they have a description of what the scenario is, what the risk is to the patient, what type of device it is, and how to contain, eradicate, and recover based off of those device types. Again, because they'd all be different. And those 7 clinical scenarios are not, I would say, fully comprehensive. I'm sure there are others, but they're a means to be able to provide a basis to your incident response program in a health delivery organization. I sort of skipped over this, but we based it off of the NIST 800-61R2. So I was mentioning, in the news, even this month, I think there's been 3 different incidents. And even reports, right? CSA put out a report earlier this month, and it's a fantastic report, and it's pretty heavy though, in the sense of it really goes down and shows you the numbers on ransomware and other use cases, but how death is really part of that as well, how people are dying as a result of some of these incidents that happen to health delivery organizations. So check it out if you haven't had an opportunity. Working heads down, I know it's hard to kind of come up for air, but there's some good research. I think they took some months to put together. So highly recommend taking some time here. And some more recent ones within the week, actually. A number of CVEs were issued to this manufacturer and different types of vulnerabilities, and the same ones that we're sort of talking about at the top 10 with kind of clear text, data, as well as hard-coded credentials, right? Vulnerable network services, like these are pervasive around not only just IoT, but just generally like embedded devices and products. And then also, ransomware that affected, an Indiana provider and in the dental space this time. And I think it was a kind of main backbone for the dental industry. I think there was a number of different branches that were affected, and 173,000 patients affected by that. So a huge amount of numbers, and the industry and how devices are now network connected makes the likelihood and susceptibility of exploitation a lot more likely. So what do you start with anytime you're getting ready for something, right? Something that is pretty important, right? You have to start with preparing. You have to understand, right, what the scenarios are, get the team together, and some of this could be much more difficult than just say get the team and all the stakeholders, right? There's a lot that kind of goes into each of these steps here for preparation. And I wouldn't say it's not something you can snap your finger and kind of get it going off the bat. There'll be iterations of your preparation, and as you learn, and we'll talk about some of those and how the whole process goes. But as you can see, once you assemble the team or understand the scenarios and classify the impacts and data as well, defining the roles of the team, right? Who is making the calls, who is running, how do you escalate, who's involved, right? To draft kind of communications, what communication pathways are available for patients or for customers, whatever the situation may be. And then, how can we use tooling to get ahead of some of these potential incidents and find them before malicious actors do or before they're exploited. And then run those exercises, right? Those tabletops, ensuring that you find those gaps and those processes that you define. And then, with those gaps, you put those into your process, right? And kind of go through the preparation stages, right? And especially with having your good backups or your golden images, as folks call them, in different use cases. So there's a lot that we invested in the preparation stage, and certainly there's a lot that could be used for a traditional sort of security program. So the second step is detect, analyze, and contextualize. And that's usually maintaining a relationship with threat intelligence groups in the particular industry. The HISACs, Information Sharing Analysis Centers, the BioISAC, and there's a couple more, I believe. Maintaining your vulnerability management program, and that can be not only your vulnerability scanning that's happening within your network and your hosts, but also your devices and how those findings and vulnerabilities are passed and being remediated, and if there's an ongoing process to help ensure that there isn't that risk is minimized. If in case it takes X amount of time, 30 days, 60 days, and that likelihood, right, of ensuring those processes are in place, it makes that sort of reduced. And a good way to sort of ensure that you're aware of the incidents that happen in the industry. Through the ISACs, they'll usually share indicators of compromise, but there's also other means. Some of those IOCs could come from tooling or from third parties, from commercial entities that you may want to incorporate into your logging and your security events with the SIEM. And MITRE provides a tool or a reference. I forgot what it's called offhand, but it can help with some of your monitoring behavior and profiling. And kind of jumping back to vulnerability management, if you are a medical device manufacturer or a manufacturer generally, right, a software bill of materials is key to know what your device is composed of. And that could be even on the cloud side as well. What packages, what components, and what downstream dependencies am I using? And how do I ensure those are actively maintained and updated? And again, to minimize risk is the whole goal. Contain, eradicate, and recover. So this is probably key here. I'm going to go through a few scenarios that we have defined here with some diagrams. This scenario is if it's safe to disconnect from the patient and the network. Now, I won't go through this like verbatim, but just so you know that there's references here, right? And if you can safely disconnect from the patient and network, it should be harmless depending on the use case there. But there's different use cases, right? How you can label your device, do not use, and how you can isolate the incident as well, and you restore from a good backup. And then when it's safe to disconnect and reconnect the device. Scenario 3 is disconnection from the network is possible, but it has clinical impact. So when it has clinical impact, right, you're affecting the patient's care, and there's extra steps that are involved, right? You can't just pull out a pacemaker, you can't just pull out an implantable. There has to be a plan, there has to be a path forward, and they're all risk-based. And at each phase, right, you'll likely be consulting different parties, not only within your organization, but perhaps with manufacturers and vendors, right? Whoever's supplying that piece of that hardware, a piece of device or software. Scenario 4 is shutdown or disconnect from the network has patient safety implications. So maybe it's dependent on the network to function, to communicate. It's terrifying, but these are out there. And similarly, right, there's different steps that you might want to take. Again, these are examples for you all to iterate on, and hopefully adapt to your particular use case and organization. So I sort of thought this aged well. You can see the top left, 2007. You caught a virus from your computer, and we had to erase your brain. I hope you've got a backup copy. And when you're talking about ransomware, right? Like some of your biggest protections are backing up and keeping backups and backups regularly, in addition to vulnerability management. But again, I feel like it aged well. And you can't just erase what you have in a medical device, right? There's other implications that could happen to safety, as far as safety is concerned. So the following steps after contain, eradicate, we have analyzing the post-incident, right? And these are a lot of kind of processes that could be adapted internally, right? You have the lessons learned or retrospective, right? What the stakeholders, what went well, what didn't go well, or what could have been better, and what can we incorporate into our process afterwards. And then sharing and updating to the ISACs and the intelligence groups, your partners, so they can learn from what you experience, so that they don't have to go through it, right? And there's a direct business impact, right? So there's a vested interest in these folks having this information available to them. And the playbook has sort of a table of what you can use to share that info and who you can share it to. As well as further steps on sharing agreements and the techniques as part of the playbook. And then you do full circle, you prepare again, because it's going to these incidents are going to continue to happen. People make mistakes. There's vulnerabilities. There's more devices and technology equipment than there is people. So it is inevitable, and it is just a matter of time. So being prepared is better than fire drill, all hands on deck, figuring things out as you go. Folks don't know who's making the call. People are stepping on each other. That how the story goes. So just want to wrap up with a brief summary on some of the projects that we walk through, and kind of broke them down by activity. And so, securely developing medical device software, we have a number of applicable projects. The top 10, ISVS, embedded apps, best practices, and zero trust, excuse me. Identifying medical device vulnerabilities. IoT Go can help you get up to speed there. Certainly very applicable to medical device vulnerabilities. As I mentioned, check out the CVEs that I mentioned earlier from the Medical Device Manufacturer Advisory. The firmware security testing methodology, we're working on that hardware security testing methodology as well. And then ByteSweep is one of the tools, and that is project backed. And then ISVS. And if you're purchasing, deploying, managing, and maintaining connected medical devices, IoT Controls Framework or Matrix, we sort of use it interchangeably. The Secure Medical Device Deployment Standard are good, great places to start for sort of those large organizations. And then preparing, detecting, and containing and post medical device security incidents, right? You want to take a look at our medical device IR playbook, and hopefully you'll find it of value and something that you can incorporate into your programs. Again, if it's your health delivery organization or not, I still recommend having a look when you get the opportunity. So how do you get involved? They said all this stuff about the projects and what we're doing, and it is a community effort, right? There's a number of contributors on each of these efforts, right? And it wouldn't happen without having volunteers and folks like you all joining in your free time, or wanting to learn as well, whether you're directly contributing or you want to be a fly on the wall. That's also an opportunity. So we have a Slack team with a Slack channel there. You can also contact any the project leaders. Once you're on Slack, you'll find out very quickly how to navigate. So we're pretty easy to get a hold of for the most part. For the OWASP IoT Working Group, for the IoT project. Then the Cloud Security Alliance Working Group, we have monthly meetings. Also have a Slack channel if those are interested. We have a community called Circle. Again, this is also free to join, free to participate, free to listen in. And as I mentioned, kind of technical and non-technical opportunities, and free and open to all who are interested. So thank you all for your time and for joining. I'll take any questions. Thanks again.
Thank you, Aaron. If anyone has a question, would you please unmute yourself and ask the question, or if you are not able to, you can also put your question in the chat box and we can read it. Any questions for Aaron?
Shoot.
Hey, Aaron, this is Brent. I have a question.
Hey, Brent, go for it, man.
As far as IoT, there's a big boom in 5G network, compatibility and stuff like that. How do you see that playing a factor in the IoT OWASP?
Yeah, great question. 5G certainly expands sort of the network connectivity, the controls also, as well as the kind of landscape of how devices talk to each other. I think it's going to be a while till it's adapted more broadly. Like we have our phones, we have devices that are just sort of being developed right now and pushed out. And sort of our devices are communicating with 5G. But the flip side of that is, right, these devices have relied on network connectivity. When you think about connected vehicles, right, they want this fast connectivity. They want this far and fast connectivity, depending on what 5G spec they're using, millimeter wave or others. So it's a landscape that is introducing more risk, depending on if the device also is capable of going down to 4G, 3G, which sometimes happens. But as far as the connections are concerned, right, and kind of the controls there, the protections have to be there as far as, on the application layer of how it's communicating over 5G, right? Encrypt everything, authenticate everything are usually the go-tos.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a question about the zero trust and the concept of these devices mostly being throwaway one-off things that usually can't be upgraded. Do you think that there's a solution for that to make sure that after the useful life cycle of a IoT device has expired, they automatically fall off the network or are forced to upgrade, or whatever else solution might be available for them?
Yeah, that is a topic and a question that is certainly debatable by many, in the sense of if you buy it, it's your hardware, you should be able to do what you want, provide that pathway for users to convert that device into something more usable, using something like OpenWRT as an example. But the reality is it depends on the manufacturer, right, and their business model and how they make money. Now, if one kind of company kind of goes under, right, and there's some sort of escrow service that provides that capability to convert your device to something else, there may be those sort of opportunities there that organizations can take advantage of. But from the consumer aspect, I am not sure how well that will be. I don't want to say adopted, but something that is going to be picked up, unless there's already some compatibility in OpenWRT or Yocto, which are those build systems. But now everything's connected, and now they're paying subscriptions, right? And you're paying subscription to access their apps and their cloud provider. For them to build something to get them off might not be in their best interest. So I think it depends on what that use case is and the dependency and sort of the model in which it's sold, right? If maybe there's a more privacy aspect or security aspect that they're catering towards that audience, could be possible, but I haven't seen one spin up, and maybe others, if others have, like, feel free to share.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Aaron? Feel free to unmute yourself, or you can't type in your question and I'll read it out.
Yeah, feel free to ping me afterwards too. Happy to share the resources, share the deck as well. I'll give it over to Edmund and Dave. And yeah, if you all have questions that come to mind later on, we all want to get involved.
There's one question, Aaron.
Sure.
It says, what are some simple things that everyone can do to protect their IoT devices, as they can be a gateway to a more malicious ways to enter into a system? By Tawan.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack, right?
We have 5 more minutes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, some simple things, right? I mean, multi-factor, if there's opportunity, if you're working with the IoT device and they provide that capability, right? I think that's the key aspect that you want to ensure, right? That your credentials are not only strong, but also you have that second form in case something does go wrong, right? To have those layered sort of controls there. I think that's always key. I think depending on the device and the manufacturer, the maturity of the organization, they may or may not have that. But making sort of that informed, hey, yeah, this device, smells, doesn't look too great. Maybe I shouldn't hook this up to my network, and or maybe I should, and I'll put it in, somewhere that isn't as sensitive, where everything else is communicating. It's a lot to ask for a regular consumer, for sure. But I think just generally, right, like monitoring what the security threats are for that particular device, updates as soon as you can. Updating embedded devices are particularly tricky. But there's a lot of different attack surface areas, not only the device and the wireless and the apps that it controls. So doing your part and ensuring that you're up to date on what the latest is for that particular device, and you're looking at any advisory that comes about. Again, there's a lot of trust involved with IoT, you're putting this this device, this empty sort of shell does something under the hood, and you sort of provides that value that you're looking for, whatever it may be. And you're hoping for the best, right? That the vulnerable packages that are on the device don't get exploited, or they're not exposed, right? Because you have no control over updating those, or like rotating the passwords, the admin passwords that they have hard coded, right? So again, just sort of kind of staying involved and engaged with sort of the happenings. And if others have any other kind of contributions to that offhand, feel free to speak up. Yeah, Kent. I'm sure there's others. Those are ones that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I personally put the webcams that I have for checking stuff around the house on my guest network, and I think most of the routers these days have the provision for easily setting up a guest network.
Yeah, that's true. The user experience has gotten much better. Yeah, I also put mine in the guest network, but I think for, like I said, a normal sort of consumer might be a tall order until it's super, super simple.
Any other questions for Aaron?
Or forever hold your peace. Certainly want to thank everybody for joining us today. Certainly want to again thank Aaron for another informative talk, and we look forward to having you speak again, or at some event do some training. I know you're a busy guy, so hey, we'll take you when it all lines up.
Sounds good. Yeah, gave me an opportunity to dust off my shirt and do my hair.
Yes, no, I've noticed that shirt. I don't know if your camera will give it a little better shot, but for some of us who recognize it, it's OWASP LA. So looks good, and you wear it well. We're proud that you're in it, bottom line. And not just us, wherever you are, whoever has the opportunity to share your space with you. Hey, thanks. They're lucky to have you.
Thank you all. Really appreciate it. I'll be back soon.
All right. Thank you everyone
care,
for
all.
joining us. Thanks again, Aaron, for presenting, and